Has the market changed its mind about what the Fed may do next?
Good day, I'm Chris Crystal with Finance Stockholm, and today is Friday, September 16th, and we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the market and what my thoughts are. But of course, it's been a very depressing week for the market. We had a continued sell-off yesterday. No real sign that we'll see any improvement today in the market outlook or in the action in the market. It is a standard witching Friday, so the options expirations will be occurring today, and we'll probably see a lot of profitable puts being exercised. And if anybody was writing calls, they'll be able to let them or just not call them or buy them back. So you have two areas of interest. Not just one thing to note, and this goes in with the global trade, is that Chinese yuan, the renminbi, actually dropped yesterday below a key level. In tightly traded markets, it was hovering around 7, and in markets where there was able to have more flexibility, you saw it dipping below 6.99. And this is an interesting development for the petrodollar versus the Chinese yuan. And you see further developments there with discussions from or comments in today's Wall Street Journal about Putin and Xi and how the relationship is going, whether China will be selling military aid to Russia for its Ukraine endeavors, and if Russia will then be getting technology from China, and then further railroad developments in the region and the shipping of the resources. So it's a small but building issue that can, it's not really small, but anyway, it continues. But for the European consumer, there are two major areas of interest. Of course, earlier in the week, you saw the Fed and Fed hikes, and U.S. mortgage household holders are looking at rates of around 6%. So they haven't seen these rates in a while. We'll see how that affects consumer spending in the coming report. But you know, the consumer was considered resilient among the cost. But there are reports out talking at 20 million of the people in America are not able to pay their mortgage or their electricity bills. And as we know here in Europe, electricity prices have been increasing. With that, Sweden is talking about the electrical network costs going up. Down here in my region, where YUAN is a main supplier, it will probably not increase the electrical because they're just increasing the rates. So we'll pay on the rates, but maybe not on the network. And so there is a discussion ongoing. We discussed the 140 billion European or Euro clawback that the governments are looking to put on the power companies. But there is a discussion about the rates and how consumers can plan for it. You've seen bill burning parties in places like Italy, other countries in Europe, on the continent. And you've even seen this in England, where you have something like over 100,000 are not able or not going to pay their bills as a sign of protest. So we'll see what that develops into. But you do continue to see more articles discussing an anti-fossil fuel stance. This is going to be interesting because we did have the transition of Shell. You saw Phillips Petroleum coming under pressure yesterday. We have had the European production slowdowns as a result of the decrease in gas consumption, which is tied to this whole issue of how to power the factories and how to heat people's homes. Germans are starting to get upset. That's historically been very bad when the Germans get upset, and their increased cost for heating their homes is going up. So the next quarter impact on consumer spendings and production will be of key interest. We see this also in the United States. But moving back to, say, the logistics side, FedEx has come out a little bit ahead of schedule to say that they're going to be closing offices. They haven't yet announced any staff cuts, but they do discuss how the FedEx is not maybe doing as well as expected. And so the global logistics are really in a mess. And if corporations have higher increased costs due to the fuel, and they're not able to meet the profitability that like FedEx has with one of these investors who wants to see a return or increased profitability, they're going to be cutting back on services. So in Europe, what does that mean for us? Well, DHL, has been looking at things to be rosy, and they highlight the risks within their shipping. Of course, they don't highlight the energy cost or the fuel cost, but they do look at things like labor shortage, and they look at how the supply chain issues could be impacted. Water is, of course, cited there because of water shortages. So, the famine that's going on down in East Africa due to the drought is something that's in consideration there. That's being exacerbated by what's going on in the Ukraine and grain shipments to these regions. But you have DSV, the Danish supplier. In July, they had actually raised their estimates. They had gone up to, I think it was over on the EBIT side, it was something like 223 million Danish kroners. So they were looking to increase because they saw an increase in freight shipping. Now they had some acquisitions in there which would positively impact them, but they were pulling out of the Russian operations. So we'll see in the next coming report what that means. And then, in general, it's something to be developed. But yes, it was an increase in their EBIT to 23,000 million Danish crowns to 25,000. But importantly, on the U.S. side, which is still one of the largest U.S. Global economies, you saw a tentative deal or temporary deal on the freight workers and not striking. Now, the Secretary of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, hasn't come out with any comments. The White House has come out and said that they've averted it. So we're in a positive trend there. So you won't see further disruptions in the logistics. So CSX, being one of them, was in play yesterday. But on primarily the movers on the market yesterday, one of the biggest gainers was on the tech side, and that's called Net Zero. And that's, again, focusing on security and preventing breaches and so forth. And that comes on the back of what Uber has just had, where they were hacked. So if you've used a Uber, your data's out there. The hackers know where you like to go, and they know how you like to pay. But also interesting was on the pharmaceutical side, you had some developments in cancer, and then that was focusing on the T cells. And then you also had a company called Aerovita Therapeutics, which gives you an inhalation device. So you simply put something in your nose and you can blow in and smell, and it'll help you with your heart disease or coronary artery disease. And so I think something that a lot of people don't realize. I mean, everybody looks at the Americans and they say, okay, look at the American diet and look at how the average person is now obese. And this is a $229 billion industry when you encompass all the effects and the healthcare cost for the heart disease and the coronary disease that it impacts. And so of that, this is the largest killer in the United States, where and on an annual basis, you see over 500,000. And in the latest figures you get off the CDC, the Center for Disease Control in the United States, it was 697,000 people died as a result. Now, that is the leading killer, the leading cause for Americans in the United States. And the two largest population groups, or three largest population groups, are affected by over 15% of the component there of the 697,000. But so when you get a product like this where you can inhale to help you with your heart disease rather than attack your issue with your diet, this is it's going to have a lot of impact, and it'll be able to move forward. So we'll see how that develops. On the media side and network streaming and so forth, you saw a little bit of action there. Companies like Netflix, and they're under stress right now because of their users and their new ad adaptation model, what they're going to see in ad revenue. But locally here in Sweden, of course, everybody loves to think about Spotify and what they've been able to do with podcasters like Joe Rogan. But there's a smaller company which was listed at First North called Acast, and they're firing something like 60% of their employees. Now, they had a mix of full-time employees and full-time consultants, but they're lowering staffing there. So the podcast era maybe has hit a peak or has hit a saturation model, and where people will have to start focusing more on the ad revenues they're getting as opposed to just having subscribers. And then maybe you'll get better metrics on how many people will listen and what parts they're listening to and where they're hopping off and how many of the ads they listen to, as opposed to speeding through them, which is what I always do. Whenever I get to an ad segment, I just hit the advance. I'm sure many people do that as well. And so this will create a little more volatility in that sector, but it continues to offer a little bit of opportunity there, although the financing is being compressed, and so it'll be harder to get a hold of. But we'll see. And of course, credit cards in the United States, there's a discussion about the credit card cost and how they're growing. And but you have a lot of companies here, particularly in Sweden, which are developing on payment model systems, which would lower those costs for the consumer and for the business providing the transaction. So I want to wish you all a great weekend, and just remember today is a standard witching day in the options, and so we may have less volatility than anticipated. We don't have any holidays coming up yet, and we're just wishing you a great weekend. So thank you very much, and have a good one. Bye.